It's the Jack and Jack show because we lost and Joe decided not to turn up. No, that's not quite what happened. Joe, working in the office this week, was at the theatre last night, couldn't quite find a time. So, Jack Stroudley, you are subbed in. How are you, mate?
Very well, very well. Delighted to be back on the channel. As you touched upon, conveniently, I only seem to appear whenever Fulham lose. So let's hope that we don't do a U-turn and decide to reappoint Scott Parker. Otherwise, Joe Sanson will just never appear on the channel again. However, here to talk about Villa and preview Everton.
Yeah, we were both at the Villa game. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because we lost, but I genuinely didn't have much to complain about. You know, I thought the red was a red. I thought the penalty was shocking, of course, and Diop a little bit unlucky to score the own goal. Overall, though, Villa were the best team to come to the Cottage so far this season, and they beat Bologna last night 2-0. They created so many chances. They're just an incredibly dangerous team to watch, exciting team to watch. But that first half an hour was absolute chaos at Craven Cottage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just a really weird game of football. As you mentioned, that first half an hour was so back and forward. Obviously, Raul Jimenez scoring inside 5 minutes. I can't think of another time where our goalkeeper has got the assist for a goal. But a really long punt over from Bernd Leno, and Raul Jimenez done fantastically well. And I actually thought Raul Jimenez had a really good game. I thought he was quite isolated up top, but you wouldn't have been able to tell that at times because he was making it really hard work for Torres and Carlos with a really good finish. And then obviously they basically go up the other end of the pitch and score a couple of minutes later for a goal where it's a little bit unlucky with the deflection. However, the position that Morgan Rogers got himself into, he found himself in it so many times during the game. There was just so many little pockets that he would just seem to kind of maneuver his way into and weave forward with the ball. And I was really, really impressed with Morgan Rogers. That's the first time I've been able to actually watch him live, obviously since his move to Aston Villa, and I thought that he was very good. And I get the hype around him now. But yeah, in terms of the game, that first half an hour was all over the place. To be fair, I think in terms of a Fulham point of view, it was all over the place for the vast majority, to be honest.
It's true, yeah. I think we failed to settle in parts of the game, and actually, when there was a chance where Fulham could actually retake the lead from the penalty spot, it probably would have put us back on track and maybe given us a chance to refocus on the task at hand. Because I thought that Villa were getting too much space in key areas of the pitch. Their wide men were getting a lot of joy as well. I thought we were struggling to adapt to how the game was going, and Villa were making things very, very difficult for us. If Pereira had done what Jay Stansfield did last night and just chuck it in from 12 yards, smash it home like Vardy did, like Salah did, all these examples of how to take a penalty. But unfortunately, he missed, and I think we lost control of the game from there. The header from Watkins is stupendous. Then there's a red card. Then they score an own goal. We score an own goal. And then they get a red card as well, but the game was pretty game, match, set, done, set, match, whatever. It was over. Talk to me about the midfield. That's the main concern that most Fulham fans had. Sanderberger, Smith Rowe, Pereira as a 3. And then going forward into the Everton game now, is that where things need to change?
I think so. I was obviously losing Sasa Lukic was a big blow, but I was also quite excited to see what Sanderberger could do, being, I guess, the most pivotal defensive-minded midfielder in the team. And he really struggled, to be honest with you. If you look at from the other side of things, I thought Amadou Onana was brilliant for Aston Villa in terms of when every time we tried to transition, he was at the forefront of pressing and getting the ball back alongside Yuri Tielemans, who I also thought was brilliant on the day. And Fulham just couldn't get out, and then we struggled to string 4 or 5 passes together. We were second to every loose ball. Physically, we were a little bit off it. And Sanderberger, didn't have a particularly great game. Obviously, everyone and their dog has made their opinions clear about Andreas Pereira, who taking the penalty aside, again, I think didn't have the greatest of games. There were a couple of times where he could have made a decision in terms of releasing the ball, and he made the wrong decision. I also thought Emil Smith-Rowe just wasn't in the game at all, to be honest with you. I think Aston Villa basically marked him out. He didn't offer anything in transition going forward, but also defensively, he didn't maybe track back or press as much as, maybe we're used to that 10 doing, with that being Andreas Pereira usually. So I just think that the midfield, that's the main cause of concern from the game. And I do think that, we will look to try and alter things going into Saturday.
I know what Joe Sanson would say if he was here, and he definitely wants Pereira dropped. He wants Iwobi playing more centrally, and then having a midfield pivot of Harrison Reed and Sander Berge for a bit more protection. And I have to agree with him that I would also like that to happen looking ahead to Saturday. However, knowing Marco and knowing Pereira's role in this team, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think he could be half right. I think we actually could play either Tom Cairney or Harrison Reed alongside Berge, preferably Harrison Reed. It's really tricky because you think about a team against like Everton at Goodison Park, and I feel we can get at them completely. However, because of the performance against Villa, because of the way our midfield operated, I'm erring on the side of caution that I don't want that to happen again. And you've got two absolute merchants in midfield of Idrissa Gana Gueye and Abdoulaye Doucouré, who can basically do exactly what Aston Villa did and just stop that threat by intercepting, by stopping us in transition. And then they can release the likes of Harrison, McNeil, Iliman Ndiaye, and suddenly you're in a whole load of Michael. So I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm a little bit. It's the first time this season, I've said it in an earlier preview, that I have no idea how we're going to line up and how I'm going to feel about us lining up. Will Smith-Rowe be better in that position, off the ball and on the ball? Let's hope. I think we're going to have quite a lot of the ball at Everton. But also, is there a situation where Iwobi could play more centrally, but also interchange with Smith-Rowe drifting to the left-hand side, and suddenly those two sort of swap and interchange throughout the game? But then again, it will mean that if Pereira is playing as a 10, it means we're only playing one holding midfielder. And I don't think Sander Berge can play holding midfield on his own. So there's a big old issue here. It basically means that one of Pereira, Iwobi, and Smith-Rowe can't start on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would rather Pereira be the one not starting. I want to know your thoughts, because this is a really important issue.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult one. I agree with you. I think that there needs to be someone alongside Sander Berge, and I would go with Harrison Reed in there. I think just his ability to press and win the ball. I think against, as you mentioned, two players there in Gueye and Doucouré, you're going to need someone alongside Sander Berge, otherwise he's just going to get bullied for 90 minutes. The question then comes, who's the third? Because for the record, I think that Iwobi will continue to play out wide, and Reece Nelson will be our option off the bench. So it's then, do you play Pereira or do you play Smith-Rowe? And I think you can make arguments for both, because Everton are a very physical side, where, they're going to look to bully you. They're going to look to, put their physicality across to you and whatnot. And I just think from that point of view, Andreas Pereira is probably slightly more suited, because his ability to press in that 10 position and put pressure on players. But on the flip side of that, we are probably going to have a lot of the ball. We're playing a Sean Dyche side. There's no point in trying to pretend we know. They're going to play, to try and break on the counter with us having a lot of the ball. And I think Smith-Rowe's creativity, would really, really benefit Fulham in that situation. So I think it's a very, very difficult one. And like I said, I think you can make arguments for both. I just think, given the fact that how dependable he's been for Marco Silva over the last couple of years, I think that Andreas Pereira is going to start over Emil Smith-Rowe. And I think that's what I would kind of do. And I think that if that does happen, and we don't get a positive result, I think that the fan base will be in absolute turmoil over Pereira.
You do fear. I mean, there were jeers when he came off the pitch, and I sort of highlighted that in a tweet when I said he was coming off, and a lot of people were saying we shouldn't jeer our own players. That's embarrassing for Fulham fans, and most people weren't in agreement that that was the right thing to do. And I agree. I don't think you should boo or jeer your own player if he's being substituted off. I think that's just doesn't help anyone. Because of Marco Silva's eagerness to be on the front foot and to attack and to entertain, I genuinely feel like he actually maybe won't change the midfield at all. And he might just say, look, I think we've got enough here. If we've got Smith Rowe and Pereira as our creative players, but then again, we are away from home. Like if I feel like if this was Lukic, there wouldn't be an issue.
No.
Lukic just sits, it doesn't matter home or away. But it was that Berger performance that for me was really worrying. I think logically we should go with a second holding midfielder alongside Berger, but also I can understand Silva's willingness to be like, no, I think that we should take the game to Everton, thus have more creativity on the pitch. And look, if we come away with a 2-0 win on Saturday with Smith Rowe and Pereira both playing and Berger, no one's going to say anything, is they? No. They're not going to say anything. Although it will then raise the issue. I think when we play at home to Brentford, we've got to be very, very careful as well. So these issues will come up in the coming days, and it's an interesting one. It's obviously concerning, it's obviously worrying, but also I trust Marco Silva to make the right decision. And even in game, if things are not working, there are players we can bring off the bench to shore things up. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. How do you see it going on the pitch in terms of, forget the midfield battle. I'm just talking about a scoreline. I'm talking about a result. I'm talking about Calvert-Lewin up front, Iliman Ndiaye, players who can hurt Fulham. And do you think that Everton will continue this good run of form, 4 unbeaten in the Premier League now, and looking for a 5th game unbeaten after a horrible, horrible start to the season?
I think that Everton, I feel like every single season of Everton over the last few years has just been a bit of a carbon copy of like they start really poorly. It's a bit of a meme because everyone boos around Goodison Park and this, that, and the other. And then, they go on this a run where they're just really tough to beat and maybe not the most spectacular, but they just grind out these 1-0, these 2-0 results, and they're just defensively really resolute. And they're currently in the middle of one of those runs. That being said, we have had the better of them, over the last couple of years for the most part. It's tough because I think going forward, I think Everton are actually they've got some very talented players, and Dwight McNeil's in a really good run of form, and I really like Iliman Ndiaye. I think he's somebody who, I would have loved Fulham to sign, and I was very surprised when he got promoted with Sheffield United that he left and went to Marseille, I think it was. But nevertheless, he's back in the Premier League, and he's a fantastic footballer. I think from a Fulham point of view, in terms of, I guess we'll do a lineup. Leno obviously in goal, Tete, Diop in for the suspended Anderson, Bassi, Robinson. As we touched on with the midfield, I'd go with Berger, Reed, and then one of Pereira / Smith Rowe. I think Silva probably lean more towards Pereira just because of how physical.
Given also that Smith Rowe was benched for Man City as well. So also in that scenario where he can't play both, he usually opts for Pereira.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Pereira there. Then I suppose the 2 wide players won't change. Adama Traore, Alex Iwobi, and then obviously Raul Jimenez at the moment is maybe outside of is one of the first names on the team sheet, basically.
Yeah.
And then score prediction. I will back us to turn it to bounce back. That's the word I'm looking for. Bounce back. I think that we'll win 2-1.
I like the confidence. I can't match that sort of confidence right now. If this was a home game, maybe I would back us to win, but away from home, I'm thinking of that performance against Ipswich Town where we were really under the cosh for quite a lot of it as well, and struggled to sort of create at times. And you've got a really good striker in Jimenez who's on really good form, and if he's completely isolated and he's got Tarkowski and Keane around him, I think that's going to be a huge issue. What I will say though is having someone on the left like Alex Iwobi up against an Ashley Young, and then maybe they switch wings and get Adama Traore at Ashley Young, it's game over. I mean, Traore wins that every day of the week. So that would be interesting to see how we sort of operate on the wide areas. What I will say is, I really want to see Reece Nelson start a game. I really do. You know, if this was if this was career mode, Arsenal would be sending us an email saying we're going to recall we're going to recall Nelson because he's not getting enough game time because of the stupid way they program that game. You know, I'm playing Nelson doesn't necessarily mean just because he's not starting does not mean he's not involved. And then they recall him, and then it's game over. I can't play him for the rest forever unless I. Anyway, what I will say is I want to see Nelson start. I don't think this is the right game to necessarily start him, but I really would like to see him deployed from the opening starting 11. But then again, a great option off the bench. Harry Wilson, who scored here a few seasons ago, he's off the bench as well. Rodrigo Muniz, if we need a goal. TC, Harrison Reed, you know, if he doesn't start, whatever. So obviously, Yalki Madison's going to be a huge miss, and I think that's actually going to be very, very important. Obviously, he's massively effective in the way we build up from the back. If Calvert-Lewin and Iliman Ndiaye and, you know, all those front players put on a bit of press, they will put Diop under pressure, and he's not great on the ball. And suddenly it's going to be on exactly what happened at Ipswich. It was on Calvin Bassey, and then he was playing passes to Robertson. He was getting pressed hard up the pitch. We were giving away throw-ins, giving away the ball. And suddenly it was looking really, really messy. And I think that's what they will target. Again, no Yalki Madison. I am worried. I think he's one of our most important players. But yeah, looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be 1-1. And I think they'll score and we'll score, and that'll be that. I don't know on the order. I'd imagine we might take the lead and then we might give it away, which is frustrating. But then again, we might win. And also, I think we could win. But I just think we'll draw. It's the late kickoff on the Saturday. And one more point to make was that we haven't lost to Everton since 2020. Hold on. Where's it gone? Oh, yes.
Was that at the Cottage when we missed a penalty?
And we were 1-0 down within a minute.
Yeah.
Calvert-Lewin, Doucouré, who scored for us that day, Bobby De Cordova-Reid, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And we missed a pen through Ivan Cavallero. Jack, I think there's not much more to talk about. I mean, it's just quite a simple transition from one game to the next. We don't want to have 3 defeats in a row after such a good start to the season.
No, you are right. It does feel like we need a bit of a reaction and we need a bit of a bounce back here. You know, after that Nottingham Forest game, there was, you know, some real optimism around Fulham going to the City Ground, which is a tough place to go, and grinding out a result and continuing with a very positive start to the season. You know, after that, you then play Manchester City and you lose, but you play really well and you probably should get a result. You know, then afterwards, obviously Villa, and, you know, we didn't play particularly great. So you want to look to retaliate and you want to look to bounce back, you know, to ensure that we don't slowly start to drop down and get sucked into anything, really. You just want to keep points ticking along. And like I said, I think we will win. I don't think a point away at a now jubilant Everton is a terrible result, in all honesty. And as you mentioned, if the game is, you know, is close and it's tight and we need to, you know, bring some options off the bench, we are now blessed with the fact that we do have a plethora of options to come off the bench. The likes of Reece Nelson, the likes of Harry Wilson, the likes of Tom Cairney, you know, Rodrigo Muniz, we've got players there who can come on and can impact a game, which I think is a position that we've maybe not been in for a couple of years now, really.
This is the 9th game of the season. Fulham have won 3, lost 3, and drawn 2. A draw would make it, let's just say we draw 1-1 or 0-0, whatever, 2-2. Let's just say 1-1. It would mean that because Fulham right now are on 11 points, have scored 11 goals and conceded 11 goals. So if we were to draw 1-1, we would have scored 12, conceded 12, and have 12 points, which is quite satisfying. Above us are Newcastle, who have played 8, scored 8, conceded 8. And below us are Bournemouth, who have played 8, scored 10, conceded 10. Very interesting stuff. But look, if Fulham were to win this, and suddenly it'd be 4 wins, 2 draws, and 3 defeats from 9 games, that's a very good return, considering the fixtures that we've had as well. I mean, I still think, I genuinely think, the loss against United, it was just one of them ones. But I think Villa are one of the best teams you will play in the Premier League this season. They are so good at football, and obviously City are City. If Fulham win this, it would be a really good response, and actually it would again staple how it would hammer home how well we've started this season and how we are, a Premier League, a solid Premier League team looking upwards as opposed to looking downwards. If you're heading to Goodison Park, it's the final time unless we get them in the FA Cup this season, which seems like it's almost inevitable that we'll get them one more time after playing them in the League Cup last season. I urge you to drink either the world famous Arkles or what's the other pub called? The Brick? The Brick? I think it's called The Brick.
Yeah, The Brick. But that's an Everton pub, isn't it? So
there you go then. So the world famous Arkles. I am, super jealous I can't be drinking in their pre-match, but enjoy it. There's also, of course, around the corner, the chip shop. They can and will allow you to bring food into the pub, so please do. Pints are fairly cheap in there as well. And because it's a 5:30, you can watch like Soccer Saturday or whatever they call it these days in the pub as well. If you get there really early, there's no early kickoff in the Premier League this weekend, so you'll have to watch the Championship, whatever's on at 12:30. Jack, thanks so much for being here, mate.
Cheers. Thank you for having me. As Jack said, anyone going up to Everton, thoroughly enjoy it. It's a great away day. I am gutted that I am not going to Goodison one last time. By the time I got round to trains, it just wasn't feasible financially for me to do it. So unfortunately, I will not be there, but I'll be cheering on. And yeah, enjoy it all, because it's a good away day. It's a good away day, and an even better one if we get a result.
We've obviously had so many years of terrible, terrible trips to Goodison Park, and the last 3 times we've been there as fans, we've won. And I suppose drew, but then won on penalties. It still counts. And the last 4 times we've been there, we've picked up a result as well. We won there on Valentine's Day, thanks to Josh Madger's brace as well. Excited to be in the press box for the final time. Obviously, Goodison Park, I haven't done that ground in the press box before, so looking forward to that. Before they move to the new stadium, which is quite a generic looking stadium. It looked very Bundesliga.
It just looks like a big Tesco's from the outside. It's just like glass panelled long doors. It's just it's a bit boring. It's a bit boring.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of you look at new stadiums now and you look at Spurs' and state of the art sort of Spurs stadium. I know they're not on the level of Everton and whatever, but I just thought Everton could have done a little bit more in terms of home traditions. It just looks very generic to me.
I don't know. I know. I get it. It's modern football. I just hate I hate bowls, like the bowl circular state, like the modern states. I just hate them so much. It's so boring. It's like when you like what you've got now. I mean, you've got in terms of those kind of traditional circular stadiums. You've got Arsenal, Tottenham, Leicester, Southampton,
West Ham,
now Everton. I suppose City that's pretty generic as well.
What's not generic is Craven Cottage.
Exactly that. The day we move into a bowl stadium is the day I stop supporting Fulham.
It's a great ground, isn't it? We don't talk about it often, but Craven Cottage is just the most wonderful stadium in the world. And we'll be back there for the Monday Night Football against Hounslow, or whatever they call themselves these days. The Buster. I really shouldn't just call it Brentford. Just call it Brentford. Thanks very much for watching. Jack, thanks so much for being here, mate.
Cheers for having me.
Guys, we'll speak again in the week. I reckon Joe Santos will be back unless we lose and he comes up with another excuse why he can't do it this week. That's obviously a joke. We missed him dearly and he'll be back next week. Thanks very much for watching, and come on Fulham.